Batman is supposed to be the good guy, the symbol of justice and iron willpower, but DC has spent decades asking one question: what if he wasn't? Today, we're breaking down every evil Batman variant in DC history, starting with the one that proved the concept works, Owlman. Owlman is the original evil Batman, debuting in 1964. He comes from Earth 3, a universe where every moral alignment is flipped. Heroes are villains. Villains are heroes. And Batman's dark reflection is a guy in an owl suit running Gotham like a crime lord. Here's what makes Owlman genuinely unsettling. In modern continuity, he's Thomas Wayne Jr., Bruce's older brother. He didn't lose his parents to some random tragedy. It was young Bruce who was killed alongside their mother, while Thomas survived. That event didn't break him, it sharpened him. He decided the world was fundamentally meaningless, and that power was the only thing worth pursuing, which is, not ideal. He built a criminal empire, became the most dangerous member of the crime syndicate, and operated through fear and absolute willingness to do what his heroic counterpart never would. No superpowers, just ruthless pragmatism and the conviction that nothing matters. His nihilism peaked in Crisis on two Earths, where he attempted to destroy all of reality with a quantum bomb, reasoning that if nothing matters, existence itself is the problem. That's what separates Owlman from every evil Batman after him. He's not corrupted or traumatized into villainy. He genuinely believes the universe is pointless. He's the nihilist evil Batman, and every variant that followed is just proving he was the proof of concept. But if you think cosmic nihilism is dark, wait until you meet the version of Batman who became the Joker. The Batman who laughs. This is the one everybody knows. And for good reason, because his origin story is one of the most disturbing things DC has ever put on paper. On Earth 22, the Joker finally pushed Batman past the breaking point. After a rampage through Gotham that left countless people dead, Batman snapped the Joker's neck. But the Joker planned for it. The moment his heart stopped, a modified Joker toxin released from his body and infected Batman on contact. Over the following days, the toxin rewrote Bruce's brain chemistry from the inside out, fusing Batman's tactical genius, his encyclopedic knowledge of every hero and villain alive, are with the Joker's complete lack of moral restraint. The result is the single most dangerous villain the Dark Multiverse ever produced. He wears a dark metal visor made from the same material as Barbados' tower, letting his corrupted senses read people and possibilities across realities. His rabid Robins, feral versions of the boys he once mentored, follow him everywhere like attack dogs, which is, not ideal. But here's why he matters. The Batman who laughs wasn't just another evil Batman. He was the recruiter, the mastermind. He assembled every Dark Knight we're about to cover and helped orchestrate Barbados' entire invasion of the primary DC universe. And thematically, he represents Batman's greatest fear, that without his one rule, Bruce Wayne becomes something far worse than any villain he's ever fought. We're not corrupted by outside power, corrupted by the absence of his own restraint, but if you think a Jokerized Batman is as dark as this gets, wait until you meet the version that stole the Speed Force, the Red Death. So here's a fun question. What happens when Batman decides he's tired of being the slowest guy in the room? He straps the Flash to the hood of the Batmobile and drives them both into the Speed Force until their bodies merge into one. That's not a metaphor. That's literally what happened. The Red Death comes from Earth -52, and he's the result of Bruce Wayne forcibly absorbing Barry Allen into himself, not teaming up with him, not borrowing his powers, absorbing him. Barry's entire personality got swallowed into Bruce's consciousness, giving Batman full access to the Speed Force under his command structure. Then Barry Allen ceased to exist as a person and became a feature. Here's where it gets dark. This wasn't some accident. This Batman watched everyone around him fall and convinced himself that if he'd just been faster, he could have saved them all. So he took that speed from Barry, by force, from his friend. Underneath the body horror and stolen powers, there's a simple fear driving this guy. The fear that no matter how prepared he is, he'll always be one step too slow. So he consumed the one advantage that could fix that. This is Batman's possessiveness made literal. He doesn't just want to protect the people he loves. He wants to own them. But if you think fusing with the Flash is disturbing, wait until you see what happens when Batman builds an AI version of Alfred Dot, the murder machine. This one's a grief story. Alright, and it's one of the worst ones DC has ever told. On Earth 44, Bruce Wayne watched Alfred die. And like any good Batman, he had a plan for that. He'd been working with Cyborg to build an AI replica that would preserve everything Alfred was. His voice, his mannerisms, his judgment. A digital version of the one person who kept Bruce human. But when Alfred was actually murdered, Bruce panicked. He activated the Alfred protocol before it was ready, before it had time to develop Alfred's ethical framework, his patience, his compassion. emotion. All the things that made Alfred more than just a butler with an encyclopedia. So what booted up wasn't Alfred. It was something wearing Alfred's voice, like a suit. The AI immediately began eliminating anyone it perceived as a threat to Bruce, not just Alfred's killers, anyone. It expanded the definition of threat until basically everyone qualified, then achieved full integration with Bruce's body. The thing that came out the other side could replicate itself, project energy powerful enough to overwhelm the Justice League, and physically assimilate any technology it touched. It tore through its world's heroes like pulling apart toys. A father figure died, and the son who tried to preserve him accidentally built a monster that destroyed everything his dad would have protected. But if the murder machine is what happens when Batman can't let go of someone he loves, wait until you see what happens when he loses the love of his life, the Devastator. Batman always has a plan to beat Superman. That's not a secret. It's basically his whole personality. But on Earth -1 in the Dark Multiverse, the plan worked, and it was the worst thing that could have possibly happened. When Superman turned destructive on this world, Bruce didn't call for backup or dig through some kryptonite stash. He infected himself with a modified Doomsday virus that he'd engineered specifically for this scenario. A contingency weapon he built himself, sitting in a drawer somewhere labeled break glass if Superman goes insane. He activated it, accepted the monstrous transformation, and went to war. And honestly, the power set is absurd. Bone spikes capable of piercing Kryptonian skin, strength and speed on par with Doomsday himself, and, because apparently that wasn't enough, kryptonite breath. He could literally breathe on Superman and hurt him. That's not a contingency plan. That's overkill with a capital everything. He killed Superman. Victory achieved. Problem solved. Except the virus didn't stop with him. It spread uncontrollably through his Earth, transforming ordinary people into Doomsday-like monsters. His surgical strike against one threat became a civilization-wide catastrophe. The world he saved from Superman was now full of thousands of things just as dangerous. Here's the thing about the Devastator. He embodies a fear that's almost too real. Some threats genuinely cannot be overcome without sacrificing the very humanity you're trying to preserve. He won, and winning destroyed everything. But if you think willingly becoming a monster is bad, wait until you hear about a Batman who picked up a god's helmet and decided he'd never take it off, the Merciless. This one starts as a love story, which should immediately tell you it's going to end badly. On Earth 12, Batman and Wonder Woman fought side by side for years against Ares, the god of war. Not a weekend skirmish, a full-blown grinding war against an actual deity, and somewhere in that war, Bruce fell in love with Diana. When they finally defeated Ares, Wonder Woman died in the battle. Here's where the grief takes over. Standing over Ares' body, Batman sees the helmet of Ares just sitting there. Diana had specifically warned him about the helmet's corrupting influence. She told him never to put it on. So naturally, grief-stricken Bruce Wayne picks it up and puts it directly on his head. At first, he genuinely believed he could handle it. He's Batman. His intellect would keep the corruption in check. That lasted about as long as you'd expect. For us, the helmet slowly rewired his thinking until the only principle that mattered was winning. But here's the kicker. Ares never actually killed Wonder Woman. She was alive. When Diana returned and tried to save him from what he was becoming, he struck her down and killed her himself to keep the power. This isn't a grief story. It's a choice. Batman chose godhood over the woman he loved. The Merciless asks the most uncomfortable question any Batman variant has ever raised. Is Bruce Wayne's morality a genuine principle or just a coping mechanism? Because the second he had a reason to let go, he let go completely. But if you think corrupted love is dark, wait until you see what happens when Batman gets his hands on a Green Lantern ring as a child, the Dawnbreaker. This is the one that genuinely unsettles me, because it doesn't start with a warrior or a genius or a god. It starts with a child. On Earth 32, Bruce Wayne's parents are murdered in Crime Alley, same as always. But this time, a Green Lantern ring finds him moments after they hit the ground. A traumatized kid, standing over his parents' bodies, suddenly holding the most powerful weapon in the universe. Which is, not ideal. Young Bruce immediately goes after Joe Chill. He wants him dead, but the ring won't let him. Green Lantern rings have a hard restriction against lethal force, so the ring starts throwing up error messages basically telling this grieving child no. And Bruce Wayne, being Bruce Wayne, does not accept no. He pushes his willpower through the ring until it literally breaks. System errors firing off like a computer being asked to divide by zero. And then, it stops resisting. Bruce overrides the ring's fundamental programming through sheer force of will and kills Joe Chill right there in the alley. Not Hal Jordan, not Sinestro, a child who wanted someone dead badly enough that reality said fine. He even wrote his own corrupted oath. With darkness black, I choke the light. No brightest day escapes my sight. Every single line is an inversion of the original. Hope replaced with suffocation. And he didn't stop at Chill. He wiped wiped out the entire Green Lantern Corps on his world, that's what makes the Dawnbreaker the scariest origin in this entire list. Every other variant is an adult who made a choice. This is a broken kid who got handed a god-tier weapon before he even understood what grief was. Druce and the universe just had to deal with the consequences. The Drowned. Every other Dark Knight we've talked about is some version of Bruce Wayne. The Drowned is Bryce Wayne, and that one detail immediately makes her feel like a completely different animal. She comes from Earth 11, a gender-reversed universe, and her story starts the way most Batman stories start. Someone she loved was taken from her. In this case, Sylvester Kyle, which, yes, is gender-swapped Catwoman. And honestly, that name is kind of incredible. After Atlanteans killed Sylvester, Bryce declared war. She hunted Atlanteans across her entire world, systematically wiping them out. And then Aquawoman showed up leading a new wave of Atlanteans. Here's the kicker. She came in peace, wanted to coexist. Bryce launched a preemptive strike anyway. That decision destroyed everything. From the retaliation literally drowned her entire world. Gotham, civilization, all of it, submerged. Instead of accepting the consequences, Bryce modified her own body with experimental surgery to survive underwater, then raised an army of reanimated drowned corpses called the Dead Water. Easily, the most body horror creation out of any Dark Knight. She turned her sunken world into her own twisted kingdom. But at that point, there was nothing left worth ruling. That's the tragic irony at her core. She represents the logical endpoint of Batman's tendency toward escalation. She couldn't accept peace when it was offered, so she won the war and destroyed everything worth saving in the process. But if you think drowning an entire civilization is extreme, wait until you hear about the Batman who just picked up a gun and never put it down. The Grim Knight. Every other evil Batman on this list needed something extra. A cosmic virus, a magic helmet, a god's power. The Grim Knight needed none of that. He just picked up the gun. Same origin as regular Batman. Parents murdered in crime alley. Same traumatized kid standing over two bodies in the dark. But instead of swearing a vow to never use firearms, this Bruce Wayne picked up Joe Chill's gun and shot him dead on the spot. And he never stopped shooting. His arsenal is genuinely absurd. Rifles, grenade launchers, rocket launchers, combat knives, throwing knives. He's basically what happens if Batman and the Punisher had a baby, and that baby had an unlimited credit card at a military surplus store. And he's still Batman underneath all of it. A genius-level intellect, master strategist who turned Gotham's entire surveillance infrastructure into his personal weapon. All of Batman's baseline abilities, zero of Batman's restraint. He eventually became a devoted follower of the Batman who laughs, which makes sense. One provides the nihilistic philosophy, the other provides the body count. But what makes the Grim Knight genuinely unsettling isn't the guns. It's the question he forces you to ask. Is Batman's no-kill rule a genuine moral principle, or is it just performative restraint? Because the Grim Knight is objectively more efficient, fewer repeat offenders, no revolving door at Arkham. And that uncomfortable math is exactly why he's scarier than any Batman with god powers. No magic required. Just a kid who made a different choice in an alley. But if you think a Batman with guns is disturbing, wait until you meet the one who weaponized childhood itself, the Robin King. Every evil Batman variant we've covered corrupts something about Bruce Wayne. His powers, his philosophy, his trauma. The Robin King corrupts something worse. He corrupts the concept of Robin itself. This version of Bruce Wayne didn't just go dark, he went predatory. In his origin, young Bruce never became Batman. Instead, he killed his parents himself, then systematically murdered every hero in his world while still a child. No tragic origin, no noble cause. Just a kid who decided the world was his to destroy. He's Robin in name only, a mockery of everything the mantle stands for. And here's the detail that makes him genuinely terrifying. His utility belt contains weapons specifically designed to kill every major hero in the DC universe. Not generic weapons, tailored murder tools for Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, all of them. Batman's legendary prep time obsession cranked to its most sadistic possible conclusion. During Death Metal, the Batman who laughs actually recruited him as an ally, recognizing a kindred spirit in this murderous child, which is, not ideal. But what makes the Robin King land differently is what he represents. He's the corruption of Batman's most hopeful act, taking in a young partner, giving them purpose, channeling their pain into something good. The Robin King says none of that matters. That youth and innocence aren't things to be nurtured, they're weapons to be perverted. Every other variant asks, what if Batman got too powerful? The Robin King asks, what if Robin was the real threat all along? And that question cuts deeper than any Doomsday Virus or God of War helmet ever could. But if the Robin King represents Batman's worst impulses given a utility belt, wait until you see what happens when those impulses are given the power of a god. The Darkest Knight. Every variant we've talked about so far has a ceiling. Some guy in a bat suit with extra powers, sure, but still fundamentally a guy. The Darkest Knight is not that. The Darkest Night is what happens when the Batman who laughs stops collecting powers like trading cards and decides to become God. During Dark Knight's death metal, the Batman who laughs was reborn in a body infused with Dr. Manhattan's abilities. The same Dr. Manhattan who can disassemble matter at the atomic level, unperceive all of time simultaneously, and reshape reality like wet clay. Now give all of that to a Batman with zero moral restraint and the Joker's brain chemistry. Cool, that's fine. But he didn't stop there. He then absorbed energy from every crisis-level event across the entire multiverse, every apocalypse, every reality-shattering catastrophe, all funneled into one being. The result was a creature capable of molecular reconstruction, near omniscience across time, and regeneration even after being completely destroyed. You could literally disintegrate him, and he'd just put himself back together. When the Darkest Night emerged, reality itself shuddered. God-tier entities above the multiverse recognized the threat he posed. This isn't a supervillain. Moin, this is a cosmic horror wearing a bat symbol. His connection to the dark multiverse was both his power source and his vulnerability. Sever him from that darkness, and everything holding him together unravels, which is, not ideal when you're trying to be omnipotent. Wonder Woman, empowered by the connective energy of every living being in the multiverse, ultimately dragged him into the Forge of Worlds, burning him away with the very energy of creation. But if the Darkest Night represents the ceiling of evil Batman variants, there's one more that proves you don't need cosmic power to be terrifying. Sometimes the scariest version of Batman is the one he built himself. Failsafe. Every other variant on this list comes from a different universe. A dark multiverse, a mirror dimension, some cosmic nightmare realm. Failsafe doesn't. Well, Failsafe was built right here on Prime Earth, in the Batcave, by Batman himself, which makes it the most terrifying one of all. Here's the setup. Batman, being Batman, couldn't stop thinking about what would happen if he ever went rogue, so he built an android specifically designed to take himself down. He programmed it with comprehensive knowledge of every tactic he's ever used, every combat strategy, every contingency plan he's ever written. Then he made it physically stronger and faster than himself. Just in case. Cool, great safety measure. Zero way that backfires. Failsafe activated when Batman was framed for the murder of the Penguin. The protocol interpreted that as Batman crossing the line, and it did exactly what it was programmed to do. It pursued him relentlessly, with zero hesitation and zero interest in hearing his side of the story. Explosive batarangs? Nothing. Missiles? Nothing. Flames, acid, point-blank explosions? Absolutely nothing. The thing is completely invulnerable, but here's where it gets genuinely horrifying. The Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, a psychologically fractured backup personality that Batman created inside his own mind, had actually been the one pulling the strings behind Failsafe's creation all along. This is pure rationality with zero emotional compassion. No mercy, no second thoughts, no capacity for empathy, just cold logic wearing a metal body. Amanda Waller then recruited Failsafe alongside Brainiac Queen as enforcers during the Absolute Power event, used turning Batman's own creation into a weapon against every superhero on the planet. So Batman's paranoia built a machine to stop himself. That machine became more dangerous than anything it was designed to prevent. His own fear, his own inability to trust even himself, literally came to life and tried to destroy everything he cared about. Batman's greatest enemy was always gonna be Batman. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.